This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, colossal cleanup. Cape Bretoners are still digging out from mountains of snow from the weekend storm.
Snowy sidewalks. Some pedestrians in Halifax struggle to get around.
And missing the mark. The Marine Stewardship Council is forced to pause its global standard of seafood sustainability.
Flurries and a risk of freezing drizzle tonight, but quieter again on Wednesday with some sunshine at least in the mix and an even brighter sky shaping up for Thursday. Your full forecast is coming up.
Good evening. A local state of emergency remains in effect for parts of Cape Breton. People there continue to dig out from a winter's worth of snow that fell in a matter of days.
A record-breaking snowfall requires some record-breaking cleanup, and that's what's been underway today for people on the island. We have extensive coverage tonight, beginning with the CBC's Blair Roads in Sydney.
I can't get out my back door at all.
Amanda Labrador is a woman on a mission. Her 19-year-old son is asleep inside. He's on painkillers. An ambulance won't pick him up.
They told me get him up there when I can. So I think he broke his hand. Yeah, so.
Is he okay?
He's in pain, but.
I got food, I got electricity. The guys will be here. They'll get me out.
In Eskasoni, they're worried about the roof of their arena.
Move to snow, it's really heavy. A lot of water in it too, eh?
It's getting heavier.
Yes, and it's going down as it goes down, it's getting heavier, and there's water in the bottom, slush building up.
Still lots of work to do. We're not done. We're not there yet.
Chief Leroy Denny is worried about the elders of Eskasoni and getting the community's grocery store open again. He's hired 40 shovelers and deployed them throughout the community.
And I told them to prioritize all the elders and disabled, and we have a lot of patients, vulnerable people in the community, and focus on them to get their steps, their ramps be shoveled out. There's huge trucks coming in from New Brunswick right now, I'm told, and to open up the streets.
Back in CBRM, officials are urging patience. While work continues around the clock, people on some side streets are being told they shouldn't expect clearing until Friday. Blair Roads, CBC News, Sydney.
As Cape Bretoners clear snow, neighbors are checking in with one another. Myrna Murphy believes this is the worst snowstorm Cape Breton has ever seen.
I think it's the worst we've ever had. I remember growing up, we'd have this over the course of a winter, but not one storm. We're doing one step at a time. Got the step cleared off, got down to the car. This road is cleared out. Now we just have this, 20 feet more or less of 5 feet of snow to get rid of. And no idea how we'll do this one. It's so heavy.
You and your neighbors, how are you getting along with this?
Oh, fine. Everyone just when everyone's out shoveling or whatever, they're just calling back and forth and, just make everyone's doing good. Yesterday, we saw quite a bit of it disappear as it melted, but now the problem is it's heavy and it's becoming solid. I have no idea of how we'll get rid of this. Hopefully my plow guy has come up with a problem solver. Where are they going to put it even when he does come to plow?
Well, Guy DeVoe is the Executive Director of Maintenance and Operations with the Nova Scotia Department of Public Works. He compares this storm to White Juan back in 2004 when it comes to challenging the province's snow removal abilities.
And really, when you look at this one and you look at parts of Cape Breton and Cape Breton County in Richmond, I think we've topped off over 150 centimeters of snow that's landed there. With the wind, of course, we had very high winds. It's been a long time, and it's good to see that we can still address this with the equipment we have and the skilled operators that we have today.
I'll talk to Guy DeVoe about the challenges his crews are facing clearing the snowy roads in Nova Scotia. That's our Newsmaker interview just after 6:30.
There are still a lot of sidewalks in Halifax that are difficult to navigate after the snowstorm. The municipality has crews dedicated to clearing the sidewalks, but as Gareth Hampshire tells us, the conditions have been making it difficult for some people.
With many sidewalks in her neighborhood covered in snow, Mary Lynn is finding it easier to walk on the road.
It was really bad. Like, not even the crosswalks are shoveled out. We had to go on the road for most of our walk.
She says the snow was too deep for her daughter to walk through this morning, so she didn't feel like there was much choice, even though she doesn't like it.
Very unsafe. I'm afraid a car's gonna come and hit us, and I just try to keep her in front of me and hope for the best.
People around the city are choosing the road while crews try to catch up on clearing the sidewalks.
I'm thinking hard if I should walk on the left or on the right side, if I should stop. I'm trying not to jump in a bank of snow. If drivers don't drive too fast, then it's okay, but it's not a good situation.
It hasn't been easy getting on and off the bus in some places either. The city reminded people to be careful about that on social media.
It was really difficult, honestly, because the snow is really high.
The snow got inside my shoes, and it's really uncomfortable to me.
With huge amounts of snow like this, the cleanup operation is going to take some time. And the municipality has about 1,000 kilometers of sidewalks to maintain.
The sidewalk plows are quite small. On a clear day, they don't run very fast. So when they're pushing this volume of snow, it can make things especially slow. It's very time consuming for sidewalks. And also, we also have to crews have to revisit a lot of places that they've already cleared.
Sidewalk crews have been working all hours since Friday. Overnight, their focus was school zones after hearing schools were reopening. They're now back to priority sidewalks, including transit stops, and will then ramp up efforts on residential sidewalks. However, anytime more than 30 centimeters of snow falls, it's a big challenge, the city says. Mary Lynn realizes that, and she's hoping people lend the crews a hand by getting out there and doing some shoveling. Gareth Hampshire, CBC News, Halifax.
All right, so the fingerprints of this past storm and still many parts of the province.
Yeah, afraid of a couple days yet still, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to take time, right? And no question about it. And I know we're focusing on Cape Breton again here, but I have to show you this photo, which has been making the rounds. Now, first, the before picture from Google Earth, and you can see the street view here. This is the Honda dealership, Ramsey's Honda in Sydney before. We had that report, that volunteer report of 150 centimeters. So hard to measure with the drifting and the blowing, but this to me is the best evidence of that so far. This lot is full of Honda CRVs, which are 5'5", 168 centimeters, and they are barely showing here. And again, there's the before. And yeah, that lot is completely full of snow. And so, yeah, 150 centimeters, that report does look like it is on the money. Now, of course, that is just one part of the storm, right? Guysborough and also into the Victoria County area, that looks like that was kind of the 90-plus zone. Based on some of the photos we've been seeing and some of the other reports coming in, looks like a widespread 60 to 90 to even 100 centimeters in parts of Pictou County, Antigonish County, and into Guysborough. And then, of course, that report in the 100 centimeter range, Spanish Ship Bay, and then those amounts dropped off. But again, this was a very, very historic storm for all areas of eastern parts of Nova Scotia. Now, as we look at the freezing drizzle advisory, this thing is still having an impact on us, even though it's well east of Newfoundland now. Those northerly winds are blowing in from the Gulf, and we are seeing that freezing drizzle advisory continue from Truro up towards Amherst for tonight. As that northerly wind drives in, yes, a few more flurries with that freezing drizzle mixing in through tonight. But this area of high pressure is moving in. It's going to kick this storm out completely over the next 24 hours. And so the clouds still lingering tonight with a few flurries in the mix, but that all comes to an end in terms of the precipitation on Wednesday afternoon. And then we are looking at the brighter skies for Thursday under a mix of sun and cloud. And again, we can thank this high for driving this storm off the coast, although as it slides south, we will see a bit of unsettled weather rolling in for the weekend. So we'll talk more about that with your full forecast in just a few minutes.
The details to come. Okay, thanks so much, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, some of Atlantic Canada's flagship fisheries are getting more time to adopt new seafood sustainability standards. The Marine Stewardship Council has delayed global implementation of its latest standard after complaints from industry that it was unworkable. Paul Withers explains.
The blue checkmark is a symbol the seafood meets the organization's gold standard for sustainability. But MSC has had to pause the latest version of that standard.
Everybody has said we have significant issues.
Steve Devitt is Sustainability Director of the Atlantic Groundfish Council, representing 5 MSC-certified fisheries in the region. Fisheries groups here and around the world have objected, saying the new version is cumbersome and vague, citing a new requirement that ghost gear impacts are demonstrably absent.
If you think about the words demonstrably absent, how do you prove that? Well, it's essentially impossible to prove that a piece of lost gear has zero impact. We don't know how to do that.
Last week, MSC announced it will rework the standard after testing and consultation highlighted areas that need to be amended. The goal, a more efficient, less complex and costly process. Fisheries wishing to recertify will be allowed to use the previous standard for another 2 years, as will fisheries wishing to enter the program.
There have been some challenges, and that's why we are taking the action we are today, to make sure that there's clarity and people can see that they understand and know the bar they need to meet and can do so efficiently.
Reaction has been mixed.
They've recognized that there is room for improvement. They've recognized that fisheries need some time, additional time, to adjust, to begin to collect the data that we're going to need to meet version 3.0, and they've allowed that. And so I think they have made a significant step in terms of bridging the gap to ensure that most of the fisheries in the program today will be able to stay in the program.
This environmentalist says it's a step backwards.
The big thing that they're complaining about is that we need more information about what they're taking out of the ocean, how their gear is impacting habitats and endangered species, and having evidence to prove that, right? And this is stuff we've been talking about for a decade. It's stuff we really need.
Meanwhile, MSC says this summer it will introduce an updated version of its standard and then conduct an independent review of its new requirements for evidence. Paul Withers, CBC News, Halifax.
The federal fisheries minister is trying to ease the concerns of some small boat harvesters in Atlantic Canada. Harvesters in the region have been seeing declining quotas and were hoping a new redfish fishery would help. Fisheries Minister Diane Leboutillier said last week they'd be allowed to catch 25,000 tons. Harvesters said that wouldn't be enough to save them from bankruptcy. Now the fisheries minister says that figure was just the beginning, and DFO won't set the total allowable catch until a redfish advisory committee makes recommendations.
I want to be crystal clear. The total allowable catch for redfish this year, the TAC, has not been decided and will not be decided until the Redfish Advisory Committee has been properly consulted and submitted its recommendations to me.
Leboutillier says the 25,000-ton number was to provide predictability to stakeholders. Federal officials held a virtual meeting last week with participants from Quebec and Atlantic Canada to discuss the total allowable catch when the fishery opens, likely in May.
The federal government is rolling out new money for emergency shelter spaces and for affordable housing.
We all know that housing is the central challenge in Canada right now. It's a central challenge in people's lives, and this is especially true for Canadians who are struggling with the high cost of rent. That's why today I'm announcing a $99 million top-up to the Canada Housing Benefit.
$100 million is also being made available for emergency winter funding. Freeland says that money will go to 85 communities across the country in need of shelter spaces for people experiencing homelessness.
Mateg and RCMP have released images of a truck they believe was involved in a hit and run a week ago in Digby County. Police say the driver of a truck struck a man on an ATV last Tuesday on Patrice Road in Church Point. The 49-year-old on the ATV was seriously injured. The driver of the pickup truck fled the scene. Now, police have released these pictures of a black GMC Sierra with some damage to the front. They're asking anyone who recognizes the vehicle to come forward.
Among many casualties of the historic storm in Cape Breton, a major basketball tournament that was set to celebrate its 40th anniversary. The New Waterford Coal Bowl Classic has officially been canceled. Organizers of the National Invitational High School Basketball Tournament say the decision was made with, quote, safety of all participants in mind. They say a meeting will take place to discuss purchased tickets and sponsorships when it is safe to do so. Though the tournament often falls during winter storms, it's the first time in its 40-year history it's been canceled. The snow delayed the arrival of several teams from Alberta and Quebec.
So far this week, people in the province have already had to shovel their fair share of snow, some more than they ever had to do in a single storm. And there's no doubt there's more to come this winter. It's easy to injure yourself while you're clearing the driveway or the sidewalk, so here are some tips to help.
For your warm-up, you want to do just some basic things. Something basic as just kind of marching on the spot, getting your knees up, getting your heart rate up a bit. You want to do some stuff for the mid-back as well, some rotation. Put your arm across your shoulders, rotate back and forth, right? Maybe 10 times per side. Shoulders, you want to do the circles. So you bring your arms up, small circles, maybe 10 or 20 times in one direction, switch directions. Do the same thing and then slowly increase the size of the circles, bringing your arms back and forth like this. 5 minutes is all you really need. So shoveling techniques, you want to keep your feet at least shoulder width apart, you know, get them wider as opposed to more narrow. You want to bend with your knees and your hips, right, to decrease don't just bend from the hips. There's a lot more strain on the low back. Brace your core. You know, very important. Tie in the legs and the core, protect your back. You want to avoid twisting, and avoid slumping forward. So when you lean forward, if your shoulders come forward and you grab some heavy snow and then you twist to throw it behind you, you know, that's a recipe for disaster. So you want to pivot your feet, point your feet in the direction that you're going to throw the snow, and that can save you a lot of trouble.
Some good advice.
I've been doing it all wrong, apparently. Got to rethink that.
Well, you know what? Nellie Furtado says Halifax should be ready to party when the Junos come to the city this year.
Should be a good time. The pop star was on hand for the Junos nomination announcement earlier today.
East Coast, baby. To the fans in Halifax, I say get ready to party.
Montreal singer Charlotte Cardin leads the way with 6 nominations. Toronto's Daniel Caesar has 5. Both are nominated for Best Artist, Best Album, and Best Single.
And while newer performers dominated, veteran acts are also on the list. That includes Nickelback, the Arkells, and Shania Twain. The Juno Award show is March 24th at the Scotiabank Centre.
All right, plenty of big names there. On our way for our first quick break. Do stay with us.
Yes, there's a lot more to come on CBC Nova Scotia News. Countries like the United States are still trying to get Hamas and Israel to negotiate a pause in the fighting.
And Britain's Prime Minister says that King Charles's cancer was caught early and the monarch will, quote, crack on with his constitutional duties.
And a beautiful look over Halifax Harbour tonight. Ryan is back next with the forecast. We'll see you on the other side of the break.
All right, some calm weather, but it's surprising how heavy the snow is getting.
With the melting,
the
right?
melting,
And it's
yeah, a little
getting...
bit melting.
We were just talking about getting the snow off the decks, and of course in eastern areas like Pictou County and Antigonish County and Guysborough and Cape Breton, where they had so much snow, getting it off the roofs of the buildings, sheds, barns. We have heard of some collapses already, and again, the weight of that is only going to increase as we get some of this wetter weather coming in over the next few days, and of course things start to melt. So definitely, if it's safe to do so, get that snow away, because it's really, really heavy. Now, temperatures out there right now, as you can see, are still right around the freezing mark. As chilly as -2 in Amherst, and we're at 2 on the plus side through the Shelburne County area, back row there, and you can see 2 at Sable Island as well, where we're looking at those northerly winds right now. That is really kind of driving the story, with a few flurries still blowing in onshore. Could see a trace to even a centimeter or 2, not out of the question tonight, nothing heavy, but also the risk of some freezing drizzle, and the best chances of that appear to be in through the Colchester-Cumberland area, up to Amherst, and between Truro and Amherst basically, but also down towards Parsborough and Cobequid Bay, and then certainly up into southeastern New Brunswick. But with this onshore flow coming in, and temperatures are borderline, just fractional right there for snowmaking. Cold in the upper atmosphere. And so what we have with that kind of a setup is it's flurries, but it's also mixing with some freezing drizzle. And this is certainly the case right through this corridor, where the freezing drizzle advisory is in effect, but we could see freezing drizzle right up into Cape Breton, and potential that it even mixes down towards the Halifax area, where there is a very slight chance of a flurry or some freezing drizzle through this evening into the overnight. So there's our storm driving away, still snowing in Newfoundland and across the Avalon Peninsula. Big ridge of high pressure stretching from Labrador all the way down to the U.S. southeast. And boy, this storm here, we're lucky that this ridge is setting up, or else that storm would be another heavy snowmaker for us, but it is going to be sailing well offshore, so we're fine for that one. This low here over the prairies right now and working its way into Hudson Bay, that's going to spin up and remain into the Arctic. It's this system here that just worked its way onto the west coast of the U.S., and that is going to be working right up through the Great Lakes and into Labrador, dragging some milder air with it, and so we'll warm up. This is a notable system, by the way. 317 millimeters of rain in 24 hours at UCLA yesterday. That is 70% of the annual rainfall. The entire year, 70% of that mark landed in one day at UCLA yesterday. Just unreal. Now, as we look at the forecast closer to home for tonight, temperatures ranging between -2 and -4. Note the northeast winds, sustained 20, gusting 30 to 40. And again, that chance for flurries right through here, and also for Cape Breton, edging down towards the Halifax area, and that risk of some freezing drizzle, but fairly light. Model really not even picking up on it. Note as we move into the Wednesday morning and afternoon time period, those winds becoming even a little bit lighter throughout the day, and they really won't be as much of a factor for tomorrow, but still northeast 15, so sustained in the 10, maybe 20 range at times, gusting upwards of 30. Temperatures right around the freezing mark for all of us tomorrow, -1 to -2. For the Northumberland Shore tomorrow, another solid clean-out day for the Northumberland Shore and Guysborough County and Cape Breton, and yes, for you folks up in the Amherst and Truro regions as well. And again, pretty sure the cleanup is done for the most part in the valley, and that 1 centimeter that fell in Yarmouth, temperatures near 1 degree there. In Halifax, of course, cleanup continues in the metro area as well, and a solid day for that tomorrow. Thursday, our nicest day of the week, no question about that. Lightest wind day, brightest sky day, temperatures ranging from -1 to +2. Is going to be a solid day with this area of high pressure dominating and that storm system driving well off to the east. And here comes that next system. And note, even with the model here, you can see that there's just not a lot of precipitation with it. We're going to see a few showers, some flurries on the leading edge, and then changing over to some showers, increasing clouds Friday. A few flurries on the leading edge, changing to showers, temperatures up around 4 degrees, a whole lot of cloud cover with this system. But a couple of big key notable things here, Tom and Amy, with this weekend system. One, It's not going to be a heavy rainmaker, so we're getting off a little easy there. 2, it's not going to be like double-digit warm-up, which, you know, obviously would be not good news as well. So we are going to have some melting, no question about it, but, you know, not crazy warm and not crazy wet, so that's some good news there.
Yeah, slow melt. That would be exactly what we're hoping
sure.
for. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Jinx.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, up next, I'll talk with the Department of Public Works for the latest on getting people dug out after last weekend's massive storm. That's our Newsmaker interview.
Stay with us. You're watching CBC Nova Scotia News.
It's the storm that's being compared to White Juan. This weekend's massive dumping of snow is testing the province's abilities to remove so much of the white stuff. It's likely it could be days before some people are dug out. Guy Deveau is Executive Director of Maintenance and Operations with the Provincial Department of Public Works. Sir, what headway has your department made today?
Well, we have done a lot of work. We've got a lot of dedicated staff out there moving snow. We've been doing so for the last few days. We have a lot of support out there with contracted forces and others coming in from New Brunswick with New Brunswick DTI, contractors from across Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, and even contractors from PEI as well. We also even have Parks Canada helping us out with a couple of units up in Cape Breton as well. But there's been a lot of snow to push, a lot of roads that were closed in, and we're picking at them, and they're coming along quite well.
So what is the priority at this point?
Well, our priority from the start has been to keep our 100 series highways clear, which I think we're in pretty good shape right now as far as the 100 series throughout the province. Of course, as we go down, we look at ensuring our routes and trunks are open as well. We're having a little bit of difficulty in 2 or 3 routes that the wind is kind of wreaking havoc on us a little bit and keeps filling things in. So we're having a few little issues there. But in addition to that, and where we are right now with all this extra gear that we've got with us is to actually open up all these local roads. So we're looking at opening up communities where there's population. Of course, we're looking at working in a prioritized manner to make sure that we get all Nova Scotians dug out as quickly as possible.
Some of the pictures show people in Cape Breton in particular, literally buried in their homes. They need to really tunnel out. The average plow can't really help them. What can you do for them?
That's a really good point. As far as our average plows, we have a lot of big equipment out there, some of which in snow drifts that we've seen that really the snow's measured in meters. I guess ordinarily we're used to measuring snow in inches, but that's not the case in this one's really unprecedented event. We've got some very large pieces of equipment, snow blowers. We've got some very large trucks, which are 4x4 trucks and 6x6 trucks equipped with V-plows, loaders with front-end buckets and blowers on them as well, and just a very large number of large equipment right now. We actually have moved some equipment from the most western portions of the province, which fortunately weren't hit as hard as the northern and eastern portions. So we've moved a number of units and staff to a northern and eastern region. We've also, through a cooperation with road builders and others, we've moved really 86 pieces of heavy equipment into the northern and eastern region to work with our own internal staff and equipment to make sure that we try to open these roads as quickly as possible.
And so do you have any sense of a timeline for when you may be able to sort of get things back to closer to normal?
Well, that's the question of the day, I guess. And with speaking to our staff and our 14 area managers, that they're working tirelessly as much as all the rest of the group, and I can't thank them enough. Our directors, our managers, especially our crews that are working out there, our operators, our dispatchers that are working hard. They're looking at this. There's a lot of information to collect. I think by the end of the day tomorrow, we'll be making headway. We'll have, I guess, the majority of roads starting to open up, but there's a long road to go, and I think we'll be at least into Friday before we can reach the extents of having all the roads open, especially in the ones that are a little bit more off the beaten path.
And can you put this storm in context? I know you've been busy trying to deal with it on a day-by-day basis now, but can you put this storm in context with what your department has had to deal with in terms of other big storms?
It's been a while. We've had a number of big storms over the years. The guess most recent memory one is White Juan. And really, when you look at this one and you look at parts of Cape Breton and Cape Breton County in Richmond, I think we've topped off over 150 centimeters of snow that's landed there. With the wind, of course, we had very high winds. It's been a long time, and it's good to see that we can still address this with the equipment we have and the skilled operators that we have today.
Do you have enough help?
At this point, we're doing really good. We have quite a bit of help out there, and the coordination of all this equipment is a task in itself, and they're doing a fantastic job. At this point, we're doing well. Ordinarily, as far as tracking the progress that we're doing, we do try to let people know to go to our plow tracker, which shows where all our plows are. I think it's important to note that on the plow tracker, we have GPS devices on the trucks that we call AVLs. We do not have those on all the private equipment that we've acquired for this. So if you're snowed in and you're looking to see where a plow and you don't see one on the plow tracker, don't panic quite yet. They could be close by. They could be on units that don't have the GPS locators, or even in areas of low cellular reception that it might not show up on the system either. So it's not necessarily that we've forgotten you. If you can't see us, we might be right there.
All right, I know it's a massive undertaking, but Guy Deveau, good of you to talk to us today about this. Thanks so much.
You're quite welcome.
Coming up, a Canadian-Palestinian man who's been missing for more than 2 weeks and had been feared dead has turned up alive in Gaza.
Welcome back. International efforts continue to negotiate a pause in the Israel-Hamas war.
The U.S. Secretary of State is now making his 5th visit to the region since the fighting started. The CBC's Chris Brown has the latest.
Antony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, is in Egypt today and then on to Qatar and then here to Israel and over to Ramallah in the West Bank after that. His prime directive appears to be twofold, and that is to prevent so many of the shooting wars that we've seen in this region from getting worse, and at the same time trying to set the stage for a longer-term peace, and if not peace, at least not war. And the first order of business that's essential for all of those plans to fall into place is a pause in the fighting between Israel and Hamas. It's why the Houthis have said they're attacking ships in the Red Sea, why Hezbollah says it's firing on northern Israel, and why groups such as the Islamic Resistance in Iraq have been attacking U.S. targets and U.S. allies in Syria and Iraq. The decisions on whether the fighting stops in Gaza are up to Israel and Hamas. Hamas is said to be considering a proposal to pause the fighting, but for how long, we don't know. Also to exchange Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian detainees. How many, over what time frame, we also don't know. And it would appear that one of the key issues for Antony Blinken is this time frame for a truce. Significant pause is the language that the U.S. uses, while Hamas wants permanency. There have been a lot of deliberate leaks about these discussions. Israel has been spreading a narrative that Hamas is split between its leaders in Qatar and those on the ground in Gaza. One group is apparently, or so the narrative goes, ready to take a shorter pause, while those on the outside are pushing for a much longer one. Beyond that, the Americans let it be known that they're fixed on a much larger horizon, one that sees the hostages and prisoners swapped, the fighting paused, and then a defined plan for governing Gaza agreed on, which would then set the stage for a two-state solution, Saudi recognition of Israel, and then a grand remake of the Middle East, all with the deadline of the November presidential elections. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
A Palestinian-Canadian man who disappeared in Gaza 2 weeks ago has resurfaced.
Live from Gaza. It's February the 6th, 2024, here in Khan Yunis in Nasser Hospital.
As a citizen journalist, Mansour Schumann has been posting English-language social media reports about the situation inside Gaza. He says he went into hiding after a run-in with Israeli troops. He says he was out with a team of volunteers that came under sniper fire and were hemmed in by tanks. Schumann says they were going to check on the progress of a tent project. He was last heard from on January 21st. Initial reports suggested Schumann had been taken into custody by Israeli forces.
A day after Buckingham Palace announced that King Charles has cancer, there is a lot of concern, questions, and speculation. The CBC's Briar Stewart reports from London.
King Charles and Queen Camilla waved to a small crowd outside of Buckingham Palace, the first time he's been seen publicly since the palace announced the king's cancer diagnosis.
It's unexpected, but at least he'll be treated quick because of who he is.
It's interesting to see where we go from here, knowing that we hadn't really settled into it yet.
Charles then flew to the Sandringham estate and is said to be optimistic about his treatment. Before that, he briefly met Prince Harry, who flew in from Los Angeles to visit with his father. The Prince of Wales, William, is now expected to take on more public duties alongside Princess Anne.
Your Royal Highness, how is the King?
It's a very big deal that just 9 months or so after his coronation, he's having to completely withdraw from public life. He will hope that will be very temporary.
Charles will continue with his duties as head of state, including his weekly meeting with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who disclosed today that the king's cancer was caught early.
There isn't a lot of detail about the king's diagnosis, just that it isn't prostate cancer. But the palace is already being more open now than it has been in the past.
There to welcome His Majesty as a former...
In 1951, Charles's grandfather, King George VI, had part of his lung removed. But doctors reportedly didn't even tell the king he was battling lung cancer. He died 5 months later. It's not clear how forthright the palace will be as Charles's treatment continues.
I think they're trying to be as open as possible, but not pinning themselves into a corner about exactly what's happening in terms of timeframes or committing to anything.
What is clear is that Charles is now taking time to rest, stepping back from a role he waited decades to step into. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Canada's commitment to Ukraine dominated debate on Parliament Hill today. The Prime Minister was grilled about why a Nazi-aligned veteran was invited to a private event, while the Leader of the Opposition was roasted over his party's lack of support for a Canada-Ukraine free trade bill. Here's the CBC's Kate McKenna.
Prime Minister, why didn't you let Canadians know that you invited Yaroslav Hunka to that event?
The Prime Minister dodging questions about how Yaroslav Hunka, a Nazi-aligned Ukrainian veteran, was invited to a private event hours after he was recognized and applauded during a visit from Ukraine's president.
The Prime Minister has been claiming for months that he had no involvement in or knowledge of the invitation of a former Nazi soldier to the visit of the Ukrainian president. Now we know that he personally invited that same individual.
The attacks that the Leader of the Opposition is choosing to make against the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress demonstrates the extent to which this Conservative Party no longer stands with Ukraine.
Justin Trudeau's office says it was a mass invite, including names that were recommended by the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress, and that Hunka didn't end up going.
What we're talking about is some name that came from a community organization. Obviously, the Prime Minister had no knowledge of this.
This comes as Ukraine continues to be a polarizing topic among parliamentarians.
Polyev has been talking a lot about and crying about the importance of freedom. But the reality, we know that he's about freedom for some and not for all. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians are fighting for their freedom and ours, and we will continue to support them for as long as it takes.
Mr. O'Regan. Today, the House of Commons passed a bill to modernize free trade with Ukraine without the support of Conservatives. They say they can't support the bill's mention of a carbon tax, something Ukraine has had for years.
I'm reading the words that are in the trade deal. That in order for this trade deal to be implemented, Ukraine must agree to promoting a carbon tax. That is not something that we can support.
Both the Conservatives and the NDP say Canadians deserve answers about how Yaroslav Hunka ended up invited to an event with the Prime Minister of Canada and the President of Ukraine. The Ukrainian-Canadian Congress has not responded to multiple requests for comment about whether they were the ones who put his name forward. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
Europe is fighting the measles. Cases have exploded over the last year, and as the spread of COVID-19 has shown us, distance is no longer an issue for viruses. The CBC's Lauren Pelly looks at concerns here.
Across the pond, a virus few people think about anymore has made a grim return. New data show there were more than 40,000 measles cases across Europe in 2023, a 40-fold increase from just 1 year before.
Measles is probably the most infectious human virus that is known. In fact, everybody.
This World Health Organization official says it could spread again in Canada just as easily.
And what's happened is, over the course of the pandemic, we've had a historic backsliding in the immunization rates around the world.
20 children died from measles or complications from measles.
Measles was once a common childhood illness capable of causing pneumonia, brain damage, or blindness. It also kills up to 3 out of every 1,000 children infected. Canada did wipe out the disease decades ago through widespread vaccination programs. Now, most new infections are acquired outside the country.
Globalization and travel means that, another country's problem can become our problem within literally hours.
One recent case of the highly contagious infection in Windsor, Ontario, was linked to possible exposures at multiple locations, including Pearson International Airport.
If somebody with measles goes into a store, leaves, and you go in 90 minutes later, if you are not vaccinated against measles, you can get measles.
Canada's target for measles vaccine coverage is 95%, but the latest data show the percentage of vaccinated kids 7 and under has been dropping, from 87% in 2017 to 83% in 2019 to just 79% by 2021. Doctors say the best way to keep measles from roaring back in Canada is to get more people up to date on the vaccine. Otherwise, the fear is it's not a matter of if this virus will spark more outbreaks, but when. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
For years, a trip to the ski slope started with a visit to the lift ticket window, but that's been changing. Ski operators are now focusing on sales of prepaid passes to get their fees locked in up front. It means more money for them, but there are downsides for skiers and the environment. The CBC's Paula Duhanchek reports.
Skiers and boarders haul their gear to the gondola at Banff Sunshine Village. The ticket window today noticeably quiet.
The biggest change in our sales is what we are seeing is a decline in the walk-up ticket.
It's a trend happening across the industry. While season passes and advance tickets have always been part of the ski business, resorts are pushing them harder as a way to lock in revenue even when it isn't snowing.
Warm and wet in the Whistler Village means a lot less powder than many here would hope for.
This Christmas was a prime example, little snow and poor conditions. But at Vail-owned resorts in Canada and the U.S., revenue is still strong, something the company says is all because of selling passes.
If they never got a single snowflake in all their mountains, they would still have that pre-sale revenue.
Yes, sunshine! For skiers and boarders, buying ahead of time can be a mixed bag.
Usually get savings. That's probably the biggest one. The cons is you don't know what's happening that season. So use it, beware, man.
I've had friends who've been completely injured, surgery, everything, and they didn't get reimbursed for their pass at all.
There's also some concern about the environmental impact of at least one element of the trend, the rise of multi-resort passes that give skiers access to resorts all over the world. The advantage for skiers, they can fly wherever the snow is best.
You buy this pass, while U.S. resorts are starting to shut down in mid-April, that's a great time to take a trip up to Calgary.
But some caution, flying does have consequences.
If they're encouraging people to fly long distances, long haul to go on ski holidays, it can increase climate risk by increasing emissions.
Still, experts say the trend is likely to continue. As with travel and hotel rooms, ski hills becoming one more thing customers need to book early. Paula Duhanchek, CBC News, Calgary.
For news you can trust, we have the latest on what's happening in your community and a weather forecast you can rely on no matter where you are in Atlantic Canada. I'm Amy Smith.
And I'm Ryan Snoddon.
Join us for Atlantic Tonight.
Right after the National.
I'll bet there are no shortage of pictures in Ryan's Picks folder these days.
Just a lot of snow, a lot of pictures.
Yeah, so many posted to my Facebook page where I've been posting others and then asking for more. So yeah, they just continue to come in, and some of them are more remarkable, obviously, than others. Here's one that was actually sent to our general mailbox. This one from Elgin, or the Hopewell area there in Pictou County. So this is just south of New Glasgow. And yeah, you can see, obviously, you know,
when the plow is stuck.
When the plow is stuck, it's a big storm. And that area, again, schools closed again in the Tatamagouche and also the Pictou area again for tomorrow. So as the cleanup continues there, obviously just huge amounts of snow. Anywhere from 60 to 100 centimeters there, 70 to 100 centimeters in the Pictou area, and Ganesh, Guysborough, and then, of course, into Cape Breton as well. So, yeah, definitely thinking about you folks trying to dig out there as well. And there's the Colchester-Cumberland freezing drizzle advisory that continues as we're still watching those flurries blowing in tonight. Could actually see a trace to a couple centimeters, Pictou and a Ganesh, into the Cape Breton region locally. I think generally it's just a few flakes that are going to be falling for tonight. Tomorrow it is going to be, mostly cloudy, but some sunny breaks, especially into the afternoon. Best chances for that are going to be Halifax down to the South Shore and into the Yarmouth area, and a mix of sun and cloud on Thursday with temperatures ranging from 0 to 2 on the plus side. And as we look into the magic future trackers, we look out, we are watching it keep that storm that is brewing up the Gulf Stream offshore. Please. And yes,
please.
Thankfully, it is not going to impact us, though. That system moving in from the west will bring us some flurries mixing to showers this weekend. All right, little good news there. One of the most remote corners of the world now is just a phone call away.
That is if you're cool with the potential roaming charges. A Norwegian telecom has launched the world's southernmost cell phone service.
Telenor's new 4G service is the first regular mobile phone technology to be set up this deep in Antarctica. The coverage is for this remote Norwegian research station and its in-house scientists and staff.
It also helps experts collect real-time data on glaciers, local geology, and radiation, but operating on the frozen continent means the equipment needs special protection from the extreme elements.
I bet. Wonder what those roaming fees would be like.
Pretty high.
Yeah, I think so.
On the high side, yeah.
That's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Good night.